sector lost billions when oil prices fell sharply in 2008. But AMCON's CEO Mustafa Chikeobi says that the two industries should not be treated the same way.
When you look at the downstream marketing sector, there's many of them. No single one can really claim that if they're out of business, it will cripple the economy. And the subsidy issue and the subsidy payments that they feel they are due from the government, it's a problem for that industry. So the extent to which we're willing to support that industry is different from the critical impact of the airline industry. So you have to approach them all, separately. They all come to us now and say, we will have been fine, but the government is not paying us our subsidy payments that are due. And we can't get involved in that argument. What we want is our money back. We're having a little bit more challenges with that sector today than we will be having with other sectors. But again, like I said, it's not a blunt instrument, and each one is different. And hopefully we can work through this as we get through this year and next year.
The debt recovery process was never going to be easy, considering the variety of loans that AMCON has on its books. So considering the deadline to pay bondholders, a good question is how well is AMCON doing in terms of recoveries?
It's also designed that we will not get funds until after 2 years. But I can see that as at today, we have close to 50 billion naira in cash as recoveries, even though the second year has just come. So that means we are way ahead of our targets. Secondly, apart from cash, we have also assets that borrowers have willingly forfeited to us in settlement of about 140 billion naira. So that means all in all, we can say that we have recovered close to 200 billion naira in both cash and assets as of today.
AMCON's strategy to provide some support or forbearance to selected companies seems to be enhancing the loan recovery process, at least in some cases. However, some observers question AMCON's capacity to engage over 12,000 debtors and its resolve to take the tough decisions in cases where letting some companies fail is the most sensible thing to do.
If I recall, AMCON took over about 10,000 loans, and those range from north of 5 billion to the hundreds of millions. Now, if you even resolve one loan a day, which is a tough task, that's 30 years amount of work. So there's a huge amount of work to do. They've definitely increased the number of staff there. I think they've got a couple of hundred people there. But even with that, it's very hard to resolve that in the time frame that AMCON's been given. Secondly is the issue of human capacity. Many of these firms were got into trouble because of lack of management or long-term funds. It's very hard to give the same people money back and expect them to solve problems. And so I think there's a need to engage specialist funds, technical personnel that have the requisite skill and experience in resolving and restructuring these things. The banks can't do it because the mindset is different. The banks are intermediaries. They don't have the long-term focus. They don't have the will to actually invest more capital. They want more collateral as a result. And they don't have the personnel. I think they have a social responsibility to make the system efficient. Some of these companies need to die because instead of dying, you're plowing good money after bad. And so there's a waste of resources there. It would be better to have those monies channeled into more profitable business that will actually create jobs and employment. So I think the tough decisions have to be made. And I think of those 10,000, I'd be surprised if a fair amount aren't allowed to, just pass into recovery or bankruptcy. And I think that's a very key point. It has to be done, otherwise you just find that there's an inefficient use of resources in the system, which nobody wants.
While some observers challenge the rationality of AMCON's methods and motives as it engages these debtors, few can argue against the early results, such as seen in manufacturers like SparkWest and airlines like Aero Contractors. And therein lies the irony. AMCON has kept these companies in business and provided a lifeline to some of the companies that forced the historic bailout of their banks in the first place. Wale Famrewa, CNBC Africa.